let me first of all introduce you to M.H. Abrams. So, M.H. Abrams, now, I'll not go into the biographical details, but the full name of M.H. Abrams is Mayor Howard Mike Abrams. Mike within double quotes, that is a sobriquet for Abrams. So this is Mayor Howard Abrams, largely written as M.H. Abrams, or you can just say Mayor Howard Abrams. That would be fine. You can omit the Mike thing, but the full name is Mayor Howard Mike Abrams. Now, this particular book, what is the what is the full name of this book? The full name of this book is The Mirror and the Lamp. Actually, this essay has been taken, or in fact, this is one of the first chapter, not one of the first chapter, but this is the first chapter of the book, The Mirror and the Lamp. Now, the subtitle of the book is Theory and the Critical Tradition. Romantic Theory and the Critical Tradition. Now, this was published in 1953. So, what this book talks about? This book talks about basically this is to do with romantic poetics. Now, whenever I say one poetics, you have studied related to Aristotle, which is Aristotle poetics, that is with capital P. Now, what does poetics mean? Poetics in general means that it is a set of rules and regulations. Okay. So, and this particular essay or this particular book is being considered as a classic of modern literary scholarship. Okay. And this also gained this particular prize, which was the Christian Gauss Prize. Okay. So, the name of the prize which this book got was Christian Gauss Prize, and the first chapter which is prescribed in your course is Orientation of Critical Theories, and in your syllabus I think it is written 2. So 2 is incorrect. The correct title is Orientation of Critical Theories. So what you should write is, first of all, you should write introduction, then put a colon mark, and then write Orientation of Critical Theories, and write from introduction till critical theories. It will be in double quotes. So this is the first chapter of the book, The Mirror and the Lamp, of which the subtitle is Romantic Theory and the Critical Tradition, published in 1953. So I read from this preface. This has also been circulated to you in terms of notes. I think when you will refer your text section, so there is a small biographical note about the text which says about M.H. Abrams. Now this particular thing has been taken from the text itself. Okay, so this is, I read from the text. In his preface, Professor Abrams explains. Now what does he explain? He explains that the title of the book identifies two common and antithetical metaphors of mind, because you can see one word is mirror and the other word is lamp, right? So one is to do with the reflector of external objects, and whereas other which is to do with the radiant projector which makes a contribution to the objects it perceives. Now the first of these was characteristic of much of the thinking from Plato to the 18th century till late 18th century, and the second typifies the prevailing romantic conception of the poetic mind, right? So this is a very brief introduction about Abrams and his book. So by now you know that that chapter 1 introduction, which is Orientation of Critical Theories. Now let me give you a brief overview of the chapter or the book. Now what does chapter 1 do, or how? One should always know what is the contribution of a particular critic and what is the contribution of that particular book in shaping the ideas in critical thinking, right? So the contribution of this essay or the contribution of this book is that it provides a concise history. It gives you a history of criticism, and when we go along the essay, we also find there are diagrams represented. So there is a diagrammatic scheme for discriminating various kinds of critical theory. So what has Abrams given? Abrams has given a kind of framework according to which you can analyze different theories which prevailed earlier and which were there in his present time and times to follow. So And it is also because that this is one of the best essays which is possible. It gives a good introduction to the study of modern criticism. Now, his important publications include, of course, The Mirror and the Lamp, the book, and the other important one is A Glossary of Literary Terms. You might be having this book with you. So, A Glossary of Literary Terms is a very important book. And then we have one more, which is Norton Anthology of English Literature, and there is another which is Natural Supernaturalism, and the subtitle is Tradition and Revolution in Romantic Literature. Okay, and there was one important essay which was Deconstructive Angel, and this is also very much prescribed in nearly all postgraduate courses or other curricula. So these were different works by the author. I have just named the important publications, and others you can find on Wikipedia, and I'll share the link also later on, so that will be there. Now, so the first question before beginning the very essay, or because this is my first time when I'm engaging you with paper 6, so I must know, or rather I must tell that first of all you need to understand that what do you understand by literature, criticism and theory. So theory with capital, theory as in theory, and just theory. So literature, what is literature? This I have already shared with you in your classes, that literature is something which is, or rather anything which is written or the printed matter on any subject. So that would be considered as literature. And when we talk of literature in the typical sense, or when we talk in terms of imaginative writing, it includes all genres, for example, poetry, fiction, drama, prose, etc. Right? So what is literature? So literature is anything which is written or the printed matter on any subject. It can be related to law, it can be related to any discipline or domain for that matter. So that is literature. Now, criticism, it will come later, but what is theory? So generally speaking, what do you understand by theory? Theory provides a system. What does theory do? It provides a system by which experience can be organized and made sense of, or at least into something which will be comprehensible, So I repeat, what is theory? A theory provides a system by which experience can be organized and made sense of, or at least into something which will be comprehensible, right? So say for instance, as long as we talk about how to read, we are doing literary theory. Okay, so if we say how to read this or how to do this, so that is literary theory. And the moment we start reading the text in accordance with these guidelines, so we are doing literary criticism, right? So how you should do this or how you should not do this, that is literary theory. And when you say, and when you apply all those guidelines, all those principles on a particular text, say for instance Hamlet, and you apply psychoanalysis, so you are viewing that particular text from a psychoanalytical perspective, so that is doing literary criticism. And the theory will be different from the practice, which is theory is different and practice is different. So if I were to simplify, I can say like this, that literary criticism, or you may say, is applied theory. Literary criticism is applied theory, right? So these were basics when it comes to what you understand by theory or criticism. Now, in the essay, he talks about or rather it has 4 or 5 sections, and the 4 or 5 sections in listed in your article. It is also given in the index. Let me say right. So first is, it says some coordinates of art criticism, and then he goes on to discuss various theories related to this particular framework suggested by him. So the first is mimetic theory, second is pragmatic theory, third is expressive theory, fourth is objective theory. And whereas it has 5 sections, which includes 4 sections on respective theories and 1 on some coordinates of art criticism, right? So this is the basic structure of the essay. So first of all, let us understand that what is the framework. Now, according to M.H. Abrams, right? So this can be applied nearly in all, or rather it can be used to define, to classify, to judge, or to evaluate a work of art. So what does he do? He says he puts work in the center, right? So what are the 4 elements according to him? The 4 elements which can be diagrammatically, or rather is diagrammatically represented in terms of, or rather in a triangular form, and work is in the center, and whereas we have artist is there, universe is there, and audience is there. So we have to see work. When we will see work in itself and not related to any other thing, that is the last thing, that is the 4th element. And when we are viewing work of art in relationship to the artist, that is 1, in relationship to the universe, because you can see the arrow pointing towards, from work there are arrows pointing towards audience, towards universe, and towards artist. So there has to be a relationship between the work of art with the universe, with the artist, and with the audience. Now, what do we understand by these work, artist, universe, and likewise? So that is also being explained in great detail in your first section, which is some coordinates of art criticism. Now, what do you understand by work? Now, work is the artistic product itself, right? The artifact. That is when you say a particular book or a poem. So poem in itself is a work of art. Now that has to be so that is one. So work, for work they have used words like artifact and artistic product. And the next is artist. And for artist they have used artificer. So second is that the man, so the what we should take as a focal point is the poet. So when we say work, that is the poem in itself, okay? And when we say artist, which means the poet. So I'm just giving you example. It not only means just the poet or the dramatist or just the novelist, it applies to other genres as well. And when we say universe, right, in basic terms, we can understand it to be as nature, but what does universe stand here? Universe stands here that the subject which directly or deviously is derived from existing things. Not now, as we understand that what is physics? Physics is like everything around us. Likewise, what is universe? So something which is to be about or signify or reflect something, okay, which is either or bears some relation to an objective state of affairs. So that is the universe. And last being the audience. Now the audience here, it refers to it if it is a say if one is listening to something, it can be a listener. One is viewing something, it can be spectator. If one is reading something, it can be reader. So so when we say audience, we mean listeners, spectators, and readers, to whom the work is addressed or to whose attention at any rate it becomes available. So these are 4 coordinates. These are 4 coordinates of art criticism, or these are approaches to literary criticism. Now, we can go one by one, or we can also discuss in parallel, or rather, uh, okay, let me try to put in parallel way, or how would you like to attend to the four theories? Would you like to go one by one, or parallel?
One by one.
All of you?
Sir, one by one.
Okay, so then we will do one by one. So let us do mimetic first in the order it has mentioned. So what does this mimetic theory, or later on when you apply the theory, that would be applied theory is criticism, so that you understand. So when I say mimetic theory, it is written in your chapter. Okay, so I may say criticism, okay, but you should understand why am I saying criticism, or where I am using it interchangeably. So okay, so let us begin with mimetic theories. So mimetic, you can just make say four, or rather don't make, just understand. Mimetic is to do with universe, right? Pragmatic is to do with audience, because these are four coordinates. So let me just very quickly tell you that what is the focal point in each theory. Mimetic, pragmatic, expressive, objective. In mimetic, the focal point is universe. In pragmatic, the focal point is audience. In expressive, the focal point is artist. In objective, the focal point is the work of art itself, right? Now, mimetic theories, now they are interested, as I said, in the relationship between the work and the universe, because work is there in the center, and we have to analyze things in relation to work. So there is a relationship between work and universe. In pragmatic theory, there is a relationship between work and the author or the audience. And in expressive theory, it is to do with work and the artist. And in objective, it is just a close reading of the work in itself. Now, for mimetic, there are mimesis. We understand that mimesis is like largely, admit. So mimesis, we say imitation. For imitation, there are other parallel terms which we largely use. Sometimes we say representation, we say counterfeiting, we say feigning, we say copy, or we may say image, right? Now, what does this particular theory do? It views, I also circulated a small section of this book, M.H. Abrams. So if you have M.H. Abrams, it is listed in your M.H. Abrams book under the head criticism. Now, mimetic theory, it views the literary as an imitation or reflection or representation of the world and human life. And in this, the primary criteria applied to a work is the truth and the adequacy of its representation. To the matter it represents, should represent. Okay, so this is like, it views literary works as reflections of life in terms of the truth of its representation of the reality. So the reality of the world and of human life and character. And it assumes or insists that literary works reflect reality. Now, so this is what it does. Now, when does it began? It began as an, or how does it began? Because when you understand mimesis, we go back to Plato, Socrates, Aristotle. So it began as an attack on literature by Plato, and later on it was adapted by Aristotle in a qualified way as a defense of literature. And now it is the basis of modern theories of literary criticism. Okay, so the critics related to mimetic theory, mimetic theory, what they do. So the critics who are to do with the mimetic theory, they judge a work. How do they judge a work? They judge a work on its ability to accurately represent its subject matter. Okay, how accurately it has been presented or not. Okay, so how will you know whether the copy is accurate or how whether the imitation is perfect or whether the imitation is correct or not? Because you need to look for evidences, and there can be no guarantee of the imitation, right? Suppose if you have represented something, so if I say if I am trying to find out whether it is it okay or not, or whether the image you have portrayed it is correct or not. So if I look for evidences, I will not be able to find out, because there is no guarantee of the kind of imitation which you have done. Okay, so that is largely to do with mimetic criticism. Okay, before I move on to other three, let me also explain that at a given point of time, say for instance, in your personality, there are different attributes, or what you understood in comedy of humor, that a human personality is consists of, or rather, it consists of four fluids. Okay, melancholia, sanguine, phlegm, and choler. And at a given point of time, one may be dominant. So, like as you have in that androgyny thing, androgynous, that is you. All of you have the male principle as well as the female principle. So the if boys they have the female principle dominant, then we look down. Okay, and if say vice versa, so what is there, that there should be a balance of everything in life. So a good critic would be someone who would have a, it is for sure that one thing will be dominant, but it is also other three will always be present. We cannot reject the idea that other three will not be available. The other three will be very much available, but it's just the percentage. It is just the dominant mode would be one particular aspect. So out of four elements, in one theory it may be artist, in one theory it may be that is the relationship between work and artist. So likewise, in different theories there will be something which is dominant, but the other three are also important and will be present in all of them. So what do we understand by this? We understand that all these factors, all these coordinates, they are not constant, they are variable, because they will vary depending upon in terms of functioning, in terms of meaning, in terms of method of reasoning, right? So these are variables and they are not constants. So that was mimetic theory, mimetic criticism. Now moving on to pragmatic criticism. As I told you, what does pragmatic or sometimes it is also there are also two things. One, at times we say it is similar to rhetorical criticism, and at times we also say that pragmatic criticism was revived by rhetorical criticism. So these are various threads related to pragmatic criticism. Now, as we know, in pragmatic criticism, what is the focal point? The focal point is the audience. Okay, the focal point is the audience, and when I say audience, I mean listener, spectator, readers, whosoever it is being addressed to. And here in this particular pragmatic criticism, we are concerned with the relationship between the work and the audience. Now, pragmatic criticism, it also emphasizes the artistic strategies by which an author engages and influences the responses of readers to the matters. Responses of, because the focal point is audience, everything related to audience. So how the author engages and influences the responses of readers to the matters represented in a literary work. What does it focus on? It focuses on a work as something designed to produce. Suppose there is a given work and it is being designed. So as you have understood, that is poems in Iliad, you have understood this objective correlative. Okay, so there is a particular formula to evolve or to get a kind of desired response in the reader. So therefore, as we say that Hamlet was an artistic failure, we say as an artistic failure because the objective correlative in the in this particular play Hamlet does not hold good. Okay, so what author intended and what was evoked, or what the kind of emotional response which was there in the reader was not did not tally. So therefore, it was an artistic failure. So it focuses on a work as designed to produce certain emotional and moral responses. So what it will do? It will generate, or it will produce emotional and moral responses. Great. On how these effects are moral responses of the reader, what it will include? It will include aesthetic pleasure, it will include instruction or kinds of emotion, on how these effects are produced. Now, it can be traced back to the art of poetry, which was by Horace. Okay, he was from 1st century BC and he belonged to Roman Horace. Now, and this was the dominant approach, that is the pragmatic theory. It was a dominant approach right up till 18th century, and has received fresh impetus, fresh drive in the later part of the 20th century, especially in the work of critic Wayne Booth. Now, what do these critics do? These critics judge a work on the basis of an author's success, whether author has achieved his aim, or he has gained the success in making, whether he has been successful in making the audience or the reader respond in the manner he wanted. So it is like communication. A is communicating to B. So the message or the thing which you send, signal you send to him, and if he is able to decode in the same manner, right? So that is considered to be as successful communication. Likewise, author ने जो सोचा था, अगर reader जो है वैसे desired response जिस हिसाब से वो चाहता था वैसा हुआ, तो वो pragmatic theory में आता है. Now, in their insistence on seeking the source of the reader's reaction in the work itself rather than in the consciousness of the reader, pragmatic critics differ sharply from reader response critics. It was also adopted by some structuralists also, who analyze a literary text as a systematic play of codes that produce the interpretative responses of a reader. So this is pragmatic theory. Now moving on to expressive. Now expressive theory, as I told you, what is the focal point? Focal point is the artist. So here we are concerned with the relationship between the work and the artist. Okay, it focuses on literary work as an expression of the individuality of the writer, rather focusing on the work as an art object or on an effect on a reader. So we are not concerned what kind of effect will it produce. We are not concerned this as a work of art. What we are we are just to do with the artist or the author. And here romantic critics which were mentioned in these theories were S.T. Coleridge and William Wordsworth. Now what do these critics do? These critics judge the work by its sincerity, genuineness, adequacy to the poet's individual vision, state of mind, and it often looks in the work for evidence of the particular temperament and experiences of the author, who consciously, unconsciously has revealed himself in it. Now it is currently practiced in the writings of psychological and psychoanalytic critics and in critics of consciousness, such as the ones which are prescribed in a course also. One of them is George Poulet and other is Geneva School. So this is expressive theory. Now the last is the objective theory. The last being the objective theory. Now here, what is the focal point? The focal point is the work of art in itself, that is as autonomous, without being concerned with any other three, with the other three coordinates. So we are not concerned with the artist, the audience, or the universe. Work as in just work in itself. Now what do critics do? The critics here, they focus on the intrinsic qualities of a work rather than on the work's relationship to the life of its author, to the time in which it was written, or to its effect on a reader, right? So it is just to do with the intrinsic quality, that what is within, and nothing to do with outside sources. So literary product here, it is seen as, suppose a poem is there, it is being seen as self-sufficient, autonomous object, or the world in itself, and we are not concerned with the artist, with the audience, with the universe. What we are concerned with, we are just concerned with the text itself. And what do critics do here? Now here, this particular work of art is contemplated, and it can be analyzed and judged solely by intrinsic criteria. So what is important is the intrinsic criteria, and no extrinsic, which is the external agency, is required. Such as, and what are those intrinsic criteria? For example, in a poem, we can look, say complexity is there, coherence is there, equilibrium is there, integrity is there, and the interrelation of all these component elements. So this is objective criticism or objective theory, because you understand, as the name suggests, objective, right? And basically this conception of objectivity or self-sufficiency, this as an aesthetic object, it was proposed by Kant in his book Critique of Aesthetic Judgment, and was taken up by proponents of, we have this notion also there in art for art's sake, in the latter part of the 19th century, and then later on it was taken by new critics, and also by the Chicago school and the proponents of European formalism. So this is objective theory. Okay, so these were the 4 theories discussed by M.H. Abrams in the light of his coordinates of art criticism. And what is the conclusion? So the conclusion is that Abrams, or what is his contribution? Abrams has analyzed the growth of criticism thematically, chronologically, historically, and critically. And this is something because of which he earns this place in the field or in the genre of criticism.